consent yet, or do we want to do that now?
Sure.
Okay. See, I think, Kevin, did you put the link in the chat, right? Okay.
Yeah, it's linked in the
Okay.
chat.
Great. Would people prefer to review it on their own, or would you like me to share screen so that we can all look at it together?
I can review it on my own or with shared screen.
That's fine. I'm just going to clarify a couple of things because this is really confusing. This is it's confusing in the legislation. Okay. So the legislation, when it comes to implementation, so everything that Jimmy says up to his whole phase one looks so good. And I know we talked about that. Everything else looks good too, but I want to clarify that while the legislation says that the Survey Council's duties include providing recommendations regarding the use of the survey and any additional content that could be added, when to conduct the survey, like what time during the year, because that makes a big difference. How to interpret survey results. The actual requirement for it's actually the commission, so the full HEC, that's going to adopt rules for the dissemination and collection. So what that's going to mean, and we'll go over this a couple more times because I think everybody's going to be really confused on this. What it means is that I think if this council makes recommendations for can come up with recommendations for implementation, present those to the commission would then approve them, and then they would be sent out with the survey. That's how that would work. So I don't think that the commission is going to want to rewrite any recommendations that you all make because you will be the content experts. But just to be clear that step has to happen. So you would provide the recommendations for implementation. The commission will approve those. Those will go out with the survey. The other thing that, and I love that Jimmy's thinking about follow-up because obviously that's really important. The council's duties end when they send out when the survey goes out. So you guys can choose to continue meeting if you want to, but you don't have to, and you're going to have to decide that you want to continue to meet. Does that make sense?
If there's going to be any post-implementation pieces. Got it.
Yeah. My hope, of course, is that you would continue to do that, but I can't say, oh, there will definitely be funding to continue Kevin and mine's positions and that kind of thing. So, yeah.
Sorry, I have too many windows going.
So it looks like, I don't know if Kevin, can you tell us, so the draft outreach plan that Jimmy created is, does that need to be formally approved because it's a work plan? It's not really, or how does that work?
Yeah, like I think once y'all finalize like a plan, then it'd be like a consent item for the full council.
Okay, so once it's beyond draft status, then we would submit it to the rest of the council and have them, and we would all vote, right? Whether or not that we think that's a good
plan. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I've gone ahead and uploaded it into Basecamp. So if you wanted to make edits that would be the document to use to make edits, because that document can be viewed by anyone who has the link, so we can provide that link to any member of the public that's interested in the process. I would be happy to add notes that, like footnotes that clarify the legislative language, to kind of recap what I just mentioned, if that would be useful.
Jennifer, I don't think we've met before either.
Oh, maybe I don't think we have. Sorry, I'm Jennifer Wilson. I'm the Executive Director for Diversity, Inclusion, and Cultural Engagement and the Title IX Coordinator at Oregon Tech in Klamath Falls.
Great. I'm Lisa Logan. I use they, them pronouns, and I'm the Director of the Gender Resource and Advocacy Center and Confidential Advocate at Willamette University in Salem.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Long.
Yeah, you're like me. You have a mouthful.
Yeah.
That
Small
was actually, that was actually just the joke a minute ago that my name tag needs to be 2. I need to have an additional name tag to fit all of the things, right? Yeah, on it.
Thank you for taking that time to do that.
Oh, sure.
I like this, what the group has so far, for what it's worth.
Yeah, I think Jimmy did a good job.
Yeah. I haven't met Jimmy yet either, so.
I know Jimmy through the regional Title IX coordinators meeting that we have. So we've worked together a little bit. I'm not in my normal office and my computer's doing crazy things. Sorry. Yeah, I mean, I think maybe that's something we would want to talk about in the next meetings, the post-implementation part, right? Do we want to have a phase 4, or are we fine with, well, I guess even phase 3 would sort of be post sending out the survey, wouldn't it? Ish. So, I mean, so we'd have to have a discussion about that, right? Like what you said, do we extend beyond the sending out for those 2 phases?
Mm-hmm.
But I think that the way he has it laid out, it makes sense to.
I know the other states as well have, most of them have come back with a report, about 6 months after they released the survey, that talks about lessons learned, and provides feedback. We'll get, no matter how careful we are before the survey goes out, there will always be issues that will come up of accessibility or language or, things like that, right? And so, making those adjustments might be really helpful. We'll still have probably 2 years after this survey is released before the federal survey comes out. And that's something to think about too, right? Maybe coming back together when the federal survey is released and seeing what needs to be altered.
Yeah, if we need to align them more or.
Justin, I'm picking on you because you have like you're the data person, or I think of you as the data person. I'm sorry if that's not fair, but I'm wondering if there's anything that could be added to the that can be added about how recommendations for how institutions might think about securing the data. So confidentiality and anonymity, and also how they might think about using the data.
Yeah, that's fair. That's 2 steps below where I was currently thinking about this. But yeah, for a lot of these, even if it is coming from the state, I think we would still want to consider the IRB implications and whether or not it would be worth going through the full. Having some institution or maybe a series of institutions being, officially doing a pre-approval, exempting the survey once it's done as part of asking the institution to administer it. I'll lean into what questions I was thinking about looking down at implementation. I can't recall, and maybe we don't know, are we are we sending essentially a series of questions and asking the institutions to administer it through whatever their survey software is, so Qualified SurveyMonkey or something else, or are we having a centralized administration from the state partnering with SurveyMonkey, Qualified or whatever? Do you have any idea?
Each individual institution is responsible for administering the survey, and each one owns its own data. It doesn't come, only the anonymized,
I hate that
the
word.
identified aggregated data comes back to the state. So, yeah.
So yes, I think it might be worth then, we'd want sufficient lead time for them to get it into whatever their software is they'll be using for the institutions that are administering it, as well as having gone through and having at least some institution having done an IRB style process to quantify all that. As part of an IRB, though, you would generally have some confidentiality or data protection guidelines that would be unique to every institution. That being said, most of them should have a strategy for that already, but it might be well worth having someone who has a full IRB committee. So I'm going to pick on the universities of Oregon or OSU, who would have a larger committee go through it, which means that there would need to be sufficient time for that, because often even an exempt review is still a month, just because of their processes.
Right. So once they receive the survey and the implementation guidelines, they have 2 years to administer it and still be in compliance. Speaking to and this is something I didn't have last week, I apologize. I just had no voice or brain. But the PERC, the Prevention Innovation Resource Center folks who have offered to do a session with us have a lot of information about going through the IRB process, because a lot of the other states have had the same thing, and it's almost always found to be exempt, but they had some recommendations for language to go to the IRBs about the sexual misconduct survey that would help them understand what how to think about this. So I can go ahead and start setting up the PIRC session. We had talked about having that session next month, and I could certainly look at something around, I don't know, when is your all's fall break coming?
I mean, at least for us, we haven't even started fall term yet, so we won't.
Okay.
Yeah, we're not even on fall term yet.
Okay.
But I generally speaking, we've accepted we've accepted a larger institution's IRB, and so I suspect many institutions will. So having that pre-approval, if you will, from one of the institutions might speed it up for most, but not everyone.
Okay.
And would be a good practice anyway, since the questions have been reviewed by another party.
Okay. So from one of the public universities, so Jennifer, what's your relationship with your IRB folks like? Are you?
It's yeah, they don't do a whole lot of it's not gonna be our IRB department is almost all, it's centered in our academic affairs office, and it almost does all just academic affairs things. So
I see. Okay.
Kelly, who's on this committee, is one of our main IRB folks here.
That's right. And you all did the survey a couple of years ago, so he's already gone through that process. So maybe that would suffice. Do you want to invite him to your next meeting so that you could ask him questions about that?
To this meeting, or so that the group could ask him questions about
the IRB process at Willamette?
Provide.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sure. He's on which subcommittee is he on? I wonder though, honestly, if the survey writing folks will also be working on that. I wonder.
No, the survey writing folks are focusing strictly on writing the questions, and Kelly is on that committee.
Yeah, sure. So
Yeah.
yeah, let's invite him.
Justin, do you think that would be helpful since he would have already gone through the IRB within the last couple of years?
Yeah, I think it's helpful, certainly, and then they would offer some insight perhaps on if we need to go to like an OSU university, one of the larger institutions.
All right. So would you like me to invite Kelly to your next meeting whenever that
That
is?
seems reasonable. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Rowan.
And I'll go ahead and set up the meeting with the PERC. I'll try to take a look. I know the smaller private institutions probably would have, like, Lisa, you're already in session? Yeah. So when is your fall break?
So we have a 1-day fall break on October 11th, but it's just 1 day. And
Okay.
then we have the longer fall break, November 27th, 28th, 29th. I'll be gone, I should say too, just for this committee's sake, this subcommittee's sake. I'll be away from email and computer, everything from October 9th through 14th. So if anything is happening that week, I should try to get ahead of it and do it before I leave, ideally. 9th through 14th, I'll be gone.
Okay. Rowan, unfortunately, I have to step away. I have a new faculty orientation that's starting in a few minutes, and I have to go facilitate that.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Do you want to maybe when you get a chance to take a look at Jimmy's draft and maybe make some comments and then we'll let you
Yes.
know too. Do you have any blackout days for like after the October 15th? So
No.
we could set the meeting up the next week. Okay, thank you.
No,
Okay.
I don't think so, because I think I'm back from conference then. So
Thank you, Jennifer. Have a good day.
All right. Thank you all.
Good to see you. Bye-bye.
Looking over, I do agree, Jimmy's list is very comprehensive. The questions that keep going in my mind really are around the timing from the other subcommittees on what we're planning, because say for starting with even compiling the contacts, if we do this a year out, they're going to change dramatically as people move on to different positions or what have you. So so much of this to me is almost based on timing. A lot of the theoretical I agree with strongly, but knowing where we're placed within the larger process would be helpful.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Kevin, can you remind me where we're at? Because I apologize. There was the questions. Was that going out from the questions about who the contact people would be and what software they're using to collect data? Do you remember which subcommittee that letter was going out from?
I'll look it up. I don't remember off the top of my head.
Because we are asking, and I can't remember. I can't remember which subcommittee we're asking them, who should the contact people be? Because we can create that list and save it in Basecamp so everybody's got access to it. We've been having trouble trying to figure out a way to get the colleges to let us know when their contact people change. And what we found with some of the communications I had tried sending was that they don't always answer the stuff that goes straight into like the Title IX at university.edu mailboxes. So that's going to be a tricky one. Hopefully they'll get better about updating us.
It was a survey writing subcommittee. As Caroline had a list of contacts, and we're going to coordinate and use that.
Right. I think the reason that it was going out from them was because we wanted to know if they had, which colleges and universities might have already administered surveys similar to this one, so that we could find out, who the contact people would be, and also, did they use one of the big surveys already, the CCSVS or the ARC3 or whatever. And we were also going to ask them about what platforms they were using. So when we get that information back, we can share that with the subcommittee.
Not to jump around too much, Rowan, but I
Mhm.
see you have a newsletter options. Maybe we should, especially if we're going to wait for more comments, move on down the agenda.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The newsletter options, we just have, we have the okay, and we can have help from our folks on formatting and the newsletter. What we needed to know from the subcommittee were what kind of a schedule you would want for the newsletter, and what you would want to title it. So I think we had talked about possibly doing it like on a quarterly basis to update the schools about what's going on with the survey council, and kind of what the progress is. And then as far as names, I'm terrible at naming things. So, and Sexual Misconduct Survey Council quarterly newsletter isn't a, it's not, that's not a, it's not, yeah. I'm sure there's something a little catchier.
Well, you have to have those 4 words in the title of that, like everything we do. So it's like you have to start with those 4 words.
It's true. It's true. But so if you still want to do the newsletter, does quarterly sound about right in terms of frequency? Lisa's saying yeah.
I think the newsletter conversation must have been the one that I couldn't attend. So
Okay.
I don't really know anything about the newsletter. I'll defer.
Okay. I think with the, let's see if I can. Um, okay. Trying to find our notes here. Let's see. We had talked about an email that could go out explaining the council's work, giving information about the bill, and then have ongoing updates by a newsletter that would then have information about what's going on. It could have things like links to, so what about IRB? There could be little articles like that, or best practices for handling data, or, we need student input. If you have students who would be interested in reviewing a draft copy of the survey, please have them contact us.
Is this at the subcommittee level or the council level? So this would be the subcommittee's newsletter or the council's newsletter?
It would be the council's newsletter prepared going, okay, so the subcommittee writes the newsletter on behalf of the council, and then it goes out through the HEC channels. And so it would get put up on our web page. But it would be up to this subcommittee to write or to assign. I mean, you could tell me, Rowan, we need you to write a letter on we need you to write an article on best practices for data collection or something like that. But you would need to, the committee needs to decide on the content, I think.
So one other of Indi's questions was when it'd be anticipated that the first newsletter would come out. So, having some kind of ballpark for that.
Well, and, as the person who missed the last conversation, I don't want to say, I guess, too much. To me, it would be if we're going to do something like that, like a considerations for this, for the timing of this, it would need to be tied to the larger actions of what's actually occurring. So not really a calendar based or quarterly based distribution, but if we were at a phase of doing IRB review or draft review, which I think is a different group, that would be where we'd want to solicit input versus asking if we are tasking you to write it, what are best practices in survey. So I guess I'm not as sold on, but please, Lisa, push back freely.
I am brand new here and still learning. So I think as a former communications professional, I think that it's important to have information to share when we are sharing it. So we wouldn't want to schedule, like I'm kind of with you on that. We wouldn't want to schedule quarterly exactly newsletters, but I imagine we could go within the month of each quarter. So sometime, hopefully the actions are taking place often enough that we would be able to come up with something within a quarter. But maybe we wouldn't say like November 15th newsletter deadline, like that. Maybe there could be sort of like we need at least one per quarter, but when it is during that quarter isn't necessarily completely solid unless there's a lot of action coming. And then if we don't advertise it as coming out quarterly, then people won't start expecting it quarterly. Like we could always be flexible and say, well, our plan is to try to do one quarterly. And if it's not if the activities aren't happening on that schedule, then it could be a little bit later. As long as we don't promise people we're going to send them quarterly and then not. I also wondered if I have a kind of question about the newsletter. Again, being a complete newbie, this is my first outreach committee meeting and only my second meeting in the SMSC. Can the newsletter, does our outreach and education help people with anything other than the survey related to the HB 3456? Or are we solely focused on the survey?
So I think, so if you decide to do it, so we could do it two ways. I think the way that this committee was thinking was that it would be a council-based newsletter, and that it would not have other information about 3456, that it would refer people, if you have other questions about this legislation, please contact. I think that the idea of making the newsletter contingent with news to report makes a lot of sense. I think that there's a lot to be said for that. I think there's also a lot to be said for letting folks know that they can sort of expect one, like, spring 2025 or something like that. But I'm not a communications professional. So.
As long as we don't promise when they're coming out, then the timeliness doesn't come into play. Like when there's relevant news, you'll get it. It's fine as long as we haven't said like this will be coming out every 3 months exactly, or watch for your next newsletter, because a lot of newsletters, what we do with them.
I think when I was looking at some of the other HEC programs that put out newsletters, I think they kind of, a lot of them operate the same way, just kind of as needed, or their newsletters seem rather random and intermittent to me.
So, for example, you might want to send out an initial newsletter this fall that just says, hi, we're the Sexual Misconduct Survey Council, and this is what we're working on. And these will be opportunities for input from the institutions and from your, the students. And then hopefully we'll have a survey around February, maybe, we'll have a draft survey for folks to look at, and we could then send out another newsletter that says, hey, the draft survey is available. We are looking for reviewers. If you're interested, please let us know. And then you could have another one over that, summer is always a tricky time because nobody's in their offices, but you could have another one that says, these are the implementation guidelines we're thinking about. If you'd like to have input or you have questions, please let us know. Something kind of like that. So more phase-based, Justin, is that kind of?
Yeah, I'm definitely more comfortable with the phase that we're in. What does occur to me is, if we're talking about that preliminary step, is maybe there's an opening, which I'm happy to ask you to write, Ron. But the why, the rationale of why this is important, and as well as legally required, right? But having a sense of that, and then it could be worth it if we have a good note, some of the findings, some of the changes that we've seen in other places. If we had some of the impacts that this has seen, I don't recall what state they were from, but some of the presentations that we've had.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't think we're ready, at least my sense, to do tips on implementation or all that. So I think this is more of a setting the groundwork or the floor. But again, not a communication professional, so happy to defer.
Well, I am a health educator, and as I know that you guys know, you tell them what you're going to tell them, and then you tell them the thing, and then you tell them that you told them the thing, and then you tell them what you told them, right? Okay. All right. So we will come up with a working title that will be something like, Sexual Misconduct Survey Council Update, or bulletin or something. And Endai is our communications person, and Endai likes to have everything calendared and scheduled, and we will just let Endai know that we will keep them posted. And then I've lost my window that has the agenda open. Where are we at with the agenda? Oh, here we go. Okay, we had newsletter options and then implementation and outreach plans from other states. And Kevin, again, I'm sorry, do you remember what that was supposed to be about?
That was just like a general, let's look at other states' implementation and outreach plans and, kind of compile those and use those for some guidance.
Okay.
As far as where to start.
Okay. So.
Has anyone looked for some of those yet?
Yeah,
Okay.
we have some of that information is in, if you look on Basecamp under resources, there's a folder called Other States. And we've got Massachusetts and New Hampshire. Those were the presentations that they did for the council. And then there are also, in some of the other information, there are some links to the other state information, and I'll put that in that folder so it's a little easier to find. Okay. So just to summarize, folks will review and make comments and suggestions on Jimmy's plan. We will check in with the survey writing committee and let them know that when they send out that request for contact info and et cetera, from the institutions that you want to be able to receive that data as well. We will invite Kelly to the next outreach and implementation meeting, and so that we can talk to him about about going through the IRB processes. And I will schedule a meeting with or a session with the folks from the Prevention Innovation Resources Council, so that you can ask them, so they can tell you what they learned about implementation, because they were very heavily involved with that, as well as the IRB stuff. And the newsletter will be phase-based, not calendar-based. We have a working title, and I will draft a few articles that could be included in, or at least an outline of what might go into the initial newsletter, and we could talk about that next time, possibly with the goal of getting it approved by the October commission, so that it, or council, so that it can go out at the end of October, beginning of November. Does that sound good? Okay. Right. Do you want to talk about scheduling next meeting, or shall we go ahead and send it? But since so many folks aren't here, maybe send out a when is good.
I think it's better to the polling. Yeah.
I think so too.
And Lisa, I'm going to make sure that I get you the links to the other states.
Oh, I was just looking around.
Okay. Did you find them?
I think I can.
Is...
Oh, there it is. Got it. Found it. Yes.
Okay.
Massachusetts and New Hampshire. Got
Right.
it.
There's a couple others as well. There's Illinois. I'll make sure that I put those. I'll get you those links. I'll send you those as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
And if you need someone to search around for more, let me know and I can try, but you probably know better than I do which states have done it already.
Yeah, there's actually, fortunately, folks who do this kind of work tend to be very collegial, and there's actually a meeting on, I think it's Wednesday, right? This week, where we're going to be meeting with those folks. So they're really nice, and they're really curious on how we're going to be implementing this, since we're the newest ones. But so Nevada, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Maine, Illinois, I think I'm Vermont, right? Minnesota, thank you.
That's great.
Yeah. All right. Anything else to talk about, or?
I have one question for you after Rowan, if you have a sec.
Sure, I have time.
Then I'll step off. Thanks, Rowan, for putting it together, Kevin. Thanks so much. You can ignore my email. I tried a different browser and that got me in. So thanks all.
Okay, take care, Justin.
Bye.
Okay.